Check out my latest GameCube build. It's black and yellow. It runs games from an SD card, but the optical drive is still intact. It's got a Raspberry Pi inside it, but more than all of that stuff, I've got a custom jewel made by Lab 15, and it's absolutely awesome. Okay, so the jewel on top of a Nintendo GameCube is a cool little distinctive feature of that particular console. It's very high gloss, although over time it can build up scuffs and scratches like we've got on here and look a little bit worse for wear. Now, although you can polish those out, Lab 15 have recently been experimenting in creating custom jewels for going on top of your Nintendo GameCube. When I found out about this, I got chatting with them and we ended up with this completely awesome custom jewel turning up for me in the post. I am absolutely thrilled with it. It's in the yellow and black colors of my channel. So I decided I wanted to do it justice and do an entire GameCube build in that theme. It appears to be made from a laser cut acrylic. There's quite a deep engraving out of the surface with a black resin sitting in there, and it creates a really nice kind of 3D effect on the surface. So I wanted to do a really good build for this and wanted to make it something that I would genuinely use quite a lot. So I got a Raspberry Pi Pico and did the PicoBoot mod inside, which is the custom mod chip that allows you to run software straight from an SD card without having to have a boot disk in the top. And I installed this SD2SP2 Pro in the bottom so you can get easy access to your SD card. Okay, so if you remember these amazing buttons that I installed on this Wavebird a while ago, they were made by the creative genius that is Lab 15, and their latest project involves the jewels that you get on top of a Nintendo GameCube. And if you're not familiar with those, that's these shiny bits, or sometimes a little bit scuffed up and scratched bits that are on top of the lid on the GameCube console. Now, not only is Lab 15 making these jewels, they are making custom ones, and I have this, which is a yellow acrylic replacement jewel that has a sort of recessed cutout logo that's then sort of filled with this black resin, and it just has an absolutely amazing finish. And this is going to fit inside here. I have nominated a black GameCube for it, and I am going to go the whole hog in terms of the mods with this rather than just have the jewel on top. I want to have the grey button, and the front is a little discoloured anyway. So this and this are coming out. I've got some spray paint in yellow, which is, I tried looking around for lots of different ones. This seemed to be the best match I could get colour wise. It's a matte finish as well, so it will work quite well, I think, on this panel, but we'll see how that goes. And while we're at it, we're going to do the whole mod thing. So I've also got a Raspberry Pi Pico for doing the PicoPi mod, and I've got a SD2SP2 Pro so that we'll be able to have an SD card inserted just in the side here when we are all done. But first, I'm going to need to take out this and this. I might even see if I can find a yellow LED and do a yellow power LED. So we'll do a whole on-brand yellow and black Joe Bleep style GameCube, which I'm quite looking forward to doing. So first I'm going to need to open up the GameCube to get near this button and this front panel also, so that we can do our install with the Raspberry Pi. Now, to open it up, you need to get around to the bottom, and these 4 screws are located quite far in, and they use a GameBit driver, which is I think it's called like a fluted socket or something like that, to give it its correct term, but we'll just undo those. So this lid will just lift off now. It is a little bit scuffed up on the corners, but it's in decent enough shape for it to be worth doing as a build. This part here will just unclip, and then there is a ribbon connector that lifts up from there, and this whole assembly is going to go to one side. I could unclip these two and paint them as well. It just unclips from there and there, and there's a little spring. No, not permanently attached, that just sits in that hole, so we'll slide that off there and get this one out as well. It just kind of folds in and then pops out. Again, just carefully lift out that spring, take it off. So yeah, I think I may as well paint these while I'm at it. The rest of this can now go to one side. That's staying intact, apart from later when we do the other part of the mod. And now I need to get this button out, which is quite straightforward actually. It's just clipped in place on the inside. There's not even any screws. Pop that out there, and then it should just push out the gap in the middle. There we go, there's that button, and the rest of this is going to stay together. We will be taking that out later. So we've got that we've got that, that's going to get painted, and then we've got this front panel here, which is screwed in with two fairly chunky crosshead bits. That separates off there, and we'll keep that intact for now. And for the paint to actually adhere properly, rather than just paint onto the smooth surface, I need to rough it up a little bit. I've got some Scotch-Brite somewhere, but this is essentially the same thing. This is what I'm going to use to just rub down that surface. It's not going to kind of scratch it up like if you were sanding it, it just gives it enough of a key for the paint to stick to the surface. So while that paint dries, we can start looking at our other mods. We've got the Dual to get out, which has a couple of clips on the back here and here, and it just literally pops out the top. There's a little hook to go in place there, and the clips on the side, which aren't on my replacement one. My replacement one's just the disc. Oh, that's perfect. That's so good. I'm just going to need to make sure I get my verticals in the text aligned. I'll need some double-sided tape just to grip it in place. Seems like this part's slightly raised. So what I might do is just trim those level with a Dremel so that this fits flat in there. Now that sits nice and flush in there, so I'll be able to tape it and stick it in place. So I just got all of those bumps reduced down a bit like that. Next, a little bit of a cleanup. It's not too bad, but a little bit of a cleanup will probably be pretty good. Right, that's ready to go. Let's get in here now. I think this has got a mod chip in it already, but the advantage of this PicoPi mod is that you can run Swiss from the SD card. You don't need to use the disk drive, but we'll keep the disk drive operational. The back panel pops off, and again we'll give that a little bit of a clean up. That's all okay. That whole section will just lift off as is. We will need to get at this bit. Let's got that off. Now we need to get this carefully off here. Right, now that's off, I'm going to have to go and do a little bit of research. Okay, so I've done a few notes to help me work out which bit goes where. So we are concerned with the Pico chip itself. So GP4 is pin 6, GP5 is pin 7, GP6 and 7 is pins 9 and 10, which are joined together on here. Pin 36 is 3v3, and pin 23 is ground. And I'm going to have blue for GP4, white for GP5, yellow for GP6 and 7, black for ground, red for 3v3. And they attach to, if you're looking from the controller ports at the front, it's in this area here, and they're attaching to these pins here. And the reason we've had to remove the heatsink, because the heatsink would sit here, is to get at this chip. And in particular, GP4 pin 6 goes to pin 5 on that chip, and then pin 9 on the other side there. So we're going to be soldering to a few bits on the motherboard, and when the top is back on, you can tell which way around the drive goes, because you've got like the little socket there, and you've got the socket here. So when that goes back in place, where we're going to have the wires coming out is here in this corner. So what we're going to need to do is have some means of the wires coming out at this point, because the fan is going to be in place there. The Pico is going to be mounted on here, so we need the wires to route out of this section here. So you're going to need to have some sort of opening for the wires to come through, which is kind of tricky to do, but that's what I'm going to do next. So it's like within this space, and to be honest, I think you could probably get away with just removing this bit. So really it's like, it's this space that we need to be open. So I think we can get away with just cutting off that section there. Shouldn't cause us any issues. And what I'm planning to do, because I mean this is really solid anyway, I'm going to just remove that section completely, and I'll just bend that and remove that section. Just repeated bend and you get the fatigue in the metal. Bend it that way. There we go. Like that. And then pinch that in there. And pinch that round. So I've got less of a sharp edge for wires to snag on there. I'll just do a quick test fit. That goes down there. See, this is like a common ground all the way around, but it's already touching a lot of this anyway, so that won't matter too much. When that's in place, now I've got somewhere for those wires to come out and around this corner here. Should be okay. I guess we'll soon find out, won't we? That's warming up. We'll get the flux on the points we want. So we need ground across those two, GP5. So we've got there, and I'll slosh it across all of this really, because it doesn't matter. So it's got on all of those. It's going on a pin on this chip, which is like the first one along here and the third one along on the top row there. This solder's been on here for a while, so I'm just going to add a little bit more before I start adding the wires. Now I have got this box of wire that I got from Amazon ages ago. This is 30 AWG. It's recommended to use 26, but this I've got handy and I used it last time and it worked fine. And I need it to go from here out and around and to the chip. So because I've got these big long reels of it, I'm going to cut way more than I need in each case. So I've got a blue, a red, yellow, black and white. And sorry green, you're not needed today. I'm going to get the end of each wire tinned. So I'm stripping a little bit and then right and flux on each of those. And some solder on each. Just heat the wire, add a bit of solder, smooth it along. And wipe off the excess. Ground, I'm going to leave a little bit longer because it needs to reach across those 2 points. I'm just going to trim a bit off and just leave 1 millimeter or 2 on the end of each one. And then they're ready for me to attach. You've got to kind of think about the direction that they're going in as well, because you don't want wires coming out into this area too much. So I'm going to start with the tricky ones. I think the blue one is going to be my most difficult, as it is next to a lot of other pins. I don't want any solder going across onto the other pins, so a bit more flux is probably sensible in this case. Right, so that's now in the right place, and I've got the trickiest one done straight away, and I'll just route that wire across there, and that's going to end up going that way, but I'm not going to do any wire routing just yet. My next tricky one is the GP6 and 7, which is yellow, and that one is going on the sort of second pin along there. I'll get the continuity checker on my multimeter and just check the pins either side of these that I've just soldered to make sure I haven't shorted them out. That one's okay, that one's okay, that one is fine, that one's fine there. See, I've drawn it all this way around, but with me being left-handed, it's easier for me to solder this way, so I'm actually going to get my sketch and turn it around this way so I don't get any mistakes made. So the black wire is next, and that is going on these two bits here, and attach it to one first, then that one, bridging these 2 points. This time checking for that continuity and making sure we've definitely got it right. Yeah, that's fine. And that pin there, yeah, that's all okay. White one goes to this second one along here. That's all fine. And then the red one is 2 along from that point. Okay, and now I need to kind of route these out of here towards this point. It's all coming out there, so that should be all okay now. Heat shrink tubing, which I won't actually have to shrink very much. It just gives it safe passage out of this space here. I think what I'll do is get a little bit of capped on tape just to hold it down in position, so any pulling on there just goes to the tape rather than the solder joint. That's not bad. We removed all the thermal paste before, and now we've got new that needs to go on, and I need to cut some strips of this stuff. So I've got 1mm thick, 1.5 and 2mm thick. Now these are different thicknesses because the chips are at different heights. These two are the tallest. Peel the backing off there, position it on the chip, backing off this one. No, it's double-sided on this, kind of sticky. You get it approximately the right space, you'll be alright. And there, on the flipper. I like that that's called the flipper and the console's code name was the Dolphin. That's why you've got your code of DOL. Right, enough trivia. Let's just peel these. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we got this, and it's easy to tell which way around this goes because you've got these markings on the bottom, so that'll just go in place here with our other wires routed neatly out of the way there. I'm not going to over tighten these, just going to keep nipping them up evenly. Yeah, those are all done, so now that is out of the way. We'll get this in position for going back on top. There we go. You can see where that comes out at that point, and it's just going to go around that corner, but that's not going to be an issue. So now we're pretty much ready to start putting things back together. I've got some screws to go in place here before I put the switch in. Now this can go into position, but I'm not going to put the screw on that just yet because I've got this to go in place there. I should have printed a yellow one, shouldn't I? But you're not going to see it, so just go with what I've already got. And my Pico board, freshly flashed. Okay, so although I didn't film it, let's pause for a moment and talk to you about flashing the chip. So if you are doing the PicoBoot mod, it is really, really easy to do this. There's not really any coding involved or anything like that. I know that the idea of using a Raspberry Pi might turn people off. I'll leave links in the description, but the file that you need is PicoBoot.uf2. Plug one end of your cable into your Raspberry Pi Pico, and then you hold down the boot button while you plug it into your computer. The computer will recognize it then as an external drive. You simply drag and drop that PicoBoot.uf2 file into it, and if it copies across correctly, the little green LED will light up on your Raspberry Pi Pico. You eject that, and that's it. You're ready to go. You've now got your own custom GameCube mod chip. It's in here. I just need to check. Ground is 23, which we can see there. That's this pin, so that'll be all right. And I'll need 2 little screws for going in there. I'm not sure what size. Yeah, I think that should do it. Didn't necessarily need them this long, but not to worry. So that's all gripped in position, so I'm going to need to get these points all soldered. Here for the ground, up there for the red, and down there for those. Let's just mark them off with some solder. So that's going to be our ground there. That's our red. These 2 on there, being careful of the fan, and then leave the gap, and then these 2 are going to get actually bridged together. Really awkward with the fan there, but it is what it is. If you're right-handed, you won't have an issue. So now just to get the wires in position. So that comes across there. First I've got black at the bottom there. Cut it. Strip it. Tin it. That's the black in place. Here's the yellow. Goes across to these two. That's going to go to there. Strip a little off the end. Need to strip a little more off this one. Then GP5 is white. Then the blue, just a tiny bit off that one. And then the red. So I had to stop filming because my battery died, but here we are. So yeah, it's all on there. I finished soldering, soldered all the points to the board, routed the wires. Obviously that comes around and goes in this space here where we cut and bent over the metal. There's the heat shrink tubing protecting the wires, and then hopefully everything will go back together and it won't pinch on anything, but we will have to see, won't we? So it's time to get it back together, which is going to involve getting to our painted bits and pieces. Like that. A little bit just pinched in there. Got to get the spring in place, engaged in like that. And then it pushes and clips in, and then it's like that, just slides onto there. Get the spring bent over, get the clips in position, clip in 1, 2, and there we go with that one as well. Just sits and clips in position, making sure that you're lined up with all of your sockets. All okay there. It's looking really nice, that. I've just noticed that clip there is broken. Quick fix with some glue, I think. So obviously we need the rest of the control panel in place, and when I'm screwing this on I don't want to cause any damage, so I'll just lay out a soft cloth for this front panel to go on. I did mention earlier about possibly having a yellow LED on here, but I don't know if I've got any. Out of there, and if all else fails I can always pop this one back in, because this one is quite a bit bigger. It might be too big to fit, I don't know, we'll have to see. So we've got the symbol there that shows that the flow's in there, that side's the negative, so that's the shorter wire. That'll go in there like that, and just like that one was bent there, bend it around to sit flat, and I'll bend the wires out slightly to stop it from falling out when I'm resoldering it. Heat that. Just make sure it's leaning at the right angle, it's not quite right there. So all I did was just change the angle, reheated. Should be okay, and if it's not, we'll keep that one safe and we can always pop that one back in. And just snip here and here. This attaches to the front panel, slot onto those 2 points, sit in position there, and we've got 2 screws. Right. So just get the ribbon, a little bit of pressure and wiggle until that's felt like it's slotted all the way in. bottom first and then clips in place. There we go. So that's locked onto our slots. That's looking okay actually. So my switch goes top and bottom. There we go, that fits alright. Now the lid just slots onto the console, and what I've found is you need to have the lid open when you're doing this, otherwise you can get caught on there's like catches and things that can cause you problems, whereas if you do it with the lid open, it tends to be a bit easier to get everything in place like that. Just check the power button works, that the reset button's okay, and the hinge open button works okay. I'm going to get these last 4 screws in, and while it's upside down we're going to remove serial port 2 cover. We're going to open up the SD2SP2 Pro, or if you've managed to get the spelling wrong on your print, the SD2SP2 Pro, this side face outside, so that goes there. That goes there, that slots in here, and that will just slide into place there. And now that gives us an SD card slot out the side, which is kind of handy. Now it's the time for the pièce de résistance, which we've got here, and we're going to get some double-sided tape to just grip that in position. It's not sticking. Right, okay, so it mustn't be quite lined up on those surfaces, it must be slightly raised elsewhere, maybe at the edges. I'll just get some more double-sided tape to put on. Right, let's try again. And there we go. All done. Oh, it looks great. So when I finished the build, I took it into the house for testing. I've already got a GameCube set up that's got the PicoBoot mod and so on, so I was able to just unplug the cables and SD card from that, plug them into this console and give it a try. So a little update on the LED that I replaced. One thing I was forgetting was that a yellow LED lights up orange, doesn't it? So maybe I'll revisit. I might try spray painting the inside of the lens and putting a white LED in there maybe. Maybe we'll get that with a bit more of a yellow vibe. But for now, I think it looks pretty good anyway. It did take me a couple of goes to get it working, and the main thing at fault was, unsurprisingly, the SD2SP2 Pro. The connection on this to actually go into the slot is somewhat loose. When I did a video on this last time, I did a little bit of solder to the contacts just to make it a little bit thicker. There are some issues with that in terms of the solder scraping on the connector and so on, but really in its current state, it's not that great. I did get it working, but it takes a little bit of careful wiggling and moving, and you'll see that I took out the other cover here from like the broadband adapter just to give it a little bit more room for maneuver. So it does work, but it's a little bit fiddly. Once that's in place though, everything was working fine. The Pico mod was working fine. In terms of the SD card, I simply took one out of a previous setup and put it in there to test, but I will leave a little bit of a screen grab of the structure of the files that are in there, so you can see it's pretty straightforward to do. I think you have to format it to FAT32, and then you just copy all of your files across and away you go. But as with all of this stuff, I will leave links in the description if you want to follow it through and try it out for yourself. Of course, the main reason for doing this video and my whole motivation for doing this build was the jewel on the top. But I didn't want to do a video that was just like, here's a plastic jewel, it's really nice, and then stick it on top of the GameCube. Yeah, it turns out there was a little more work involved. I did have to kind of trim down the top of the GameCube to get it to fit flush, but it's a reversible thing. If I changed my mind about this and decided to take it off, it's only held in place with double-sided tape, and the original lens would still clip in. So it's not causing any particular problems that are irreversible. But as it is, I am keeping it like this. I think it looks great. If you quite fancy getting your own custom jewel set up, I recommend you get in touch with Lab 15. And also, while you are there, check out the amazing wealth of different custom buttons and things that they've made already. There is so much stuff on that website. It is awesome. In terms of all the other stuff for modding the GameCube,
GameCube, as usual, I recommend you check out ZLabs. They support my channel by giving me the affiliate link that I'll leave in the description, where you can go and buy loads of cool stuff and even get a little bit of a discount if you follow my link. So go and check that out as well. Now, this is not the first time I have modded GameCubes. If you wanted to find out a little bit more about the SD2SP2 Pro, or indeed the PicoBoot install, I've got more in-depth videos that I'll leave linked up here for you to go and watch. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.